Felix Canton, the son of a wealthy elite high society family, and Henry Quick, a young student at Oxford, are the protagonists of the story. Oliver, after accepting a trip to the Cantons' vast rural property Saltburn and developing a friendship with them, his life undergoes a dramatic transformation. The film seems to be a character study of Oliver Quick, the protagonist, which leads one to think of Saltburn after watching it. All the way through, even as the story's foundation is laid. A young man named Oliver gets a scholarship to attend Oxford University as a result of his stellar academic record. The young man stands out as an instant outcast due to his reserved demeanor, rigid dress code, and lack of experience with the ins and outs of high society. Oliver spends most of his time alone for a number of reasons, one of which is that he is a scholarship student and much more dedicated to his studies than his peers. At the inaugural banquet, Michael Davey is the name of the boy he befriends. However, this friendship does not bring Oliver much pride. Michael, who is already a very dedicated math student, views the typical students around him as intellectually inferior and has no interest in interacting with them. After hanging out with Michael for a few days in his spare time, Oliver realizes that another student has captured his interest. Felix Cotton is charismatic and gorgeous, but that's not all he is. Additionally, he is constantly surrounded by other students, a sign of how popular he is. Oliver is also paired with another student from a wealthy family, Farley's Dart, so class is boring for both of them. Not to mention that the professor is obviously partial to him. Oliver offers to give his college friend Felix a lift when he sees that Felix is in a hurry, and that Felix is dealing with a flat tire on his bike. This gives Oliver a chance to spice up his time at Oxford. Later that night, Oliver and Michael meet up with Felix and his friends at a pub. Felix extends an immediate invitation to Oliver to join them for a few days of sitting. Oliver shows a lot of interest in his new friend after meeting him several times. Felix is getting close to his female friends. The protagonist is seen poking around, his eyes clearly showing a twinge of jealousy. When Oliver tries to be too helpful and control Felix's life by telling him to be neater and clean his room too much, he crosses the line. After this incident, Felix no longer meets with Oliver, and Oliver obviously misses having Felix around. The protagonist pays little attention to Michael's comments about Oliver's drastic wardrobe change, because he is too busy paying attention to Felix. Unfortunately, Oliver receives unexpected and devastating news from home, and tragedy ensues. Prior to this, explain to Felix that he and his parents had a strained relationship due to their struggles with substance abuse and mental illness. Next thing Oliver knows, his mother is calling to tell him that his father has passed away after a fall while under the influence of drugs. The boy cries as he goes to Felix's room to tell him the news, and Felix and his friend are there for each other through this terrible time. Oliver is still trying to decide where he should spend the summer before the school year concludes following final exams. His home is a terrible place for him to be because his mother still takes drugs regularly, and he doesn't have anywhere else to go. Upon learning all of this, Felix, ever the generous host, extends an invitation to his beloved friend to visit the expansive Saltburn Manor, the ancestral home. Since his last visit to the Saltburn estate mansion, Oliver's feelings of alienation have only grown. Because the Canton family is incredibly well off and practices almost royal traditions. Having served as the home of Henry VIII since Felix, the mansion is now filled with artifacts from the British nobility. His mother was a former model, and his father, Sir James Ellsworth, is an art collector. In general, they are careless individuals who don't give a hoot about wealth. In the contemporary era of 26, when the film takes place, it is extremely unusual for someone from Oliver's more humble background to have a butler attend to his every need, or for maids to unpack his bags and wake him up every morning. Along with learning that Farley is Felix's cousin, he becomes friends with Venetia, Felix's sister. Sir James's sister, Farley's mother, had some misdeeds when she was younger that caused him to separate her from the family estate. However, he eventually felt remorse for this choice as well. Sir James is currently footing the bill for Farley's schooling. Oliver begins to blend in as he spends more and more time at the house, and he experiences a somewhat peculiar transformation in his personality as a result. As if he finally finds his niche in this posh world, the once timid and introverted lad develops an air of self-assurance. Saltburn shows how the protagonist's self-assurance grows as he observes Felix enjoying himself one night, and becomes incredibly aroused by it. Conversely, Venetia makes her interest in the new boy at her house known by lavishing Oliver with her charms. Although Farley and others have hinted that Felix and Venetia frequently become friends before falling in love, which leads to inevitable problems, nothing has discouraged Oliver. The boy gets close to Venetia while simultaneously attempting to control her with his words, even though he is unable to make romantic advances toward Felix. The fact that Oliver had advised Venetia to read the night before makes this work as well, since she shows an unexpected and implausible interest in reading. When Farley overhears their private conversation and informs Felix about it, Oliver accuses his sister of pilfering his friends, which leads to an incident that inadvertently drives a wedge between the two of them. To make amends with his friend, Oliver must now exert considerable effort. But our protagonist must also ensure that Farley will not cause him any further trouble. He also seduces the boy while being aware that Farley is gay. Consequently, Oliver's shy demeanor turns into an endearing and charming one after just a few days, and he even tries it on Lady Elsbeth. Oliver sneaks into Farley's room the next morning, and the reason given is that the boy had apparently stolen some expensive objects from the house. As a result, Farley is expelled from Saltburn Manor. Even Sir James was hesitant to back Farley anymore. He was evicted from his room as soon as the objects were discovered there. If Oliver wanted to get the boy out of Saltburn Manor, he probably put the object in Farley's room on purpose. It doesn't take long for the protagonist to realize that Farley was just another obstacle in his pursuit of Felix's attention. The Canton family ensured the cousin's financial stability and continued education. Felix surprises Oliver by taking him to his home as his birthday draws near, after receiving a call from the boy's mother. When Felix and Oliver finally make it to the house, Oliver's life is nothing like what he had described. Oliver was raised with love and care by his parents, who were not addicts or mentally ill. They were kind, upper-middle-class people. Oliver was the one who insisted on being an only child the whole time, never once bringing up the fact that he had sisters. Plus, he once pretended his father was dead just to get Felix to pay attention to him. Looking back at the events in chronological order, Oliver concocted this colossal lie when Felix stopped spending time with him. He wanted to regain Felix's friendship, and being someone reckless enough to lie about his parents meant that Oliver could have easily removed Farley from Saltburn Manor, and become the sole breadwinner for the Canton family. When does the Canton family start to disintegrate? After Felix finds out about Oliver's lies, he refuses to let him stay at Saltburn Manor any longer, and things take a dramatic turn. Despite the protagonist's best efforts, he is instructed to vacate the premises the following morning. Even if Felix reconsiders, the decision is still final. But the boy goes up to Felix again to talk to him at the birthday party that was held in the evening in honor of Oliver. Now we're inside the estate's garden labyrinth. Two things take an unusual turn the following morning. First, Felix refuses to believe the boy anymore and cuts off all friendship with him, and second, the boy is found dead. Depending on the circumstances, Felix appears to have committed suicide or died of alcohol poisoning. While the police investigate, Oliver joins the strange deniers who claim the Canton parents are just chatting casually about the situation. Venetia, who is both shocked and grieving, assigns full responsibility for her brother's death to Oliver without delay. Venetia calls Oliver an obnoxious outsider who has no place in their posh neighborhood and tells him to get out of there. After that, she cuts her wrists in the bathtub, giving the impression that she has committed suicide. After a series of mysterious deaths, Sir James kicks Oliver out of the house because, in his opinion, Oliver is being overly dramatic. Give Elspeth permission to focus on him alone. In 2022, when Sir James dies of an unspecified cause, the Canton family death toll rises once again. In his adult life, Saltburn also jumps ahead 6 years. One can see Oliver perusing the headlines. As he was escorted from the house, it is safe to presume that he had received a sum of money from Sir James. Oliver had ensured his own financial stability for the past several decades thanks to this fortune. The captain's abrupt deaths beg the question, was Oliver somehow involved? Lady Elspeth invites Oliver to come back to Saltburn Manor immediately when they meet at the cafe in the present. Now that no one is fighting his entry, Oliver pays a visit to the site. And when Lady Elspeth becomes sick not long after, he tends to her. While he is chatting with Lady Elspeth, who is too sick to respond, Oliver delivers his monologue, which was initially shown in the film. It seemed like Oliver's troubled relationship with his college roommate Felix would be the focus of Saltburn, when he admitted at the beginning that he was never in love with him. In the final moments, though, Oliver's involvement in the unexpected deaths of the cat and family members changes the story entirely. Oliver Quick had grown weary of the upper class's unfair compassion and almost ostentatious concern for people like him. In a society where the ruling elite persists and thinks it's better than the rest of society, this may not be an unusual sentiment. Oliver hated that he was treated like an outsider all the time, that he was rescued from his suffering, and that nobody remembered his name even at his own birthday celebration. But our hero isn't your average Joe, he's also a pathological liar and someone who has no problem acting out his desires. It appears that the boy has a tendency to fabricate tales to acquire favors during his initial days at Oxford, as he is seen deceiving his parents regarding his academic achievements. Oliver viewed Felix as an influential and rich man. He pursued him by portraying himself as more attractive and destitute. Oliver was actually the one who punctured Felix's bike tire that fateful day. Everybody was captivated by the child. After he got inside Saltburn Manor, he had to do it to make sure he wouldn't have to leave again. But when things went wrong and Felix wanted him out, Oliver had no qualms about poisoning his friend's alcohol and killing him. Additionally, he left 2 knives by Venetia's bathtub and murdered her by verbally pushing her to the brink of a mental breakdown. When Sir James banished him from the house, his plan came to a halt. However, after the man's death 6 years later, it picked up again. In order to make it seem like Lady Elspeth's illness was the cause of her death, Oliver kills her at last. Oliver finally felt the moment had arrived. Most people would agree that Oliver's plot made the woman sick. The protagonist, who is both evil and insane, is able to permanently integrate himself into the upper class because Saltburn Manor is deserted. At the very end of Saltburn, in a disturbing scene, Oliver Quick makes an appearance, dancing naked through the grand estate mansion. Realizing that he has accomplished his goal from 6 years ago and is thus the rightful owner and controller of all this property,